So, guess who I root for in the AFC? The Bills.
Should be the Bills.
I'm the one who kept them in Buffalo. They were going to leave. Do you remember reading that? John Bon Jovi. You ever hear of him?
That's true.
Yeah.
You ever hear the Beatles?
Yeah.
Good. I'm not that old then. Rolling Stones?
Yes.
Good. Okay. But he was going to move him to Toronto, and I stopped it. So I'm a big Bills fan. Well, thank you, Mr. Mills. And I've always tried to help our farmers from the beginning. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. There's only one farm in all of Brooklyn. Mrs. Paglarini grows corn in her backyard, but that's about it. But once I became senator, I knew how important our agriculture economy is. And so I've worked long and hard on many different issues to help dairy. Genesee is one of our biggest dairy counties in the state. To help our fruits and vegetables. I was the first to get crop insurance for the specialty crops, for the fruits and vegetables. We've even been focusing on the lack of beehives, which don't affect hemp, I guess.
We have beehives here.
You do?
Oh,
yeah. Well, for apples, which is grown, of course, just nearby, Orleans County, Niagara County, Wayne County are our biggest apple and cherry counties. So I've worked hard for our farmers, and I'm always looking for new products. And the good news is there's a new product that New York State and New York agriculture can take the lead on. And that's why I'm here in Basom to talk about that right here. And I'm proud to be at the Mills family farm. They are fourth generation farm family. In fact, Mr. Mills told me the founder was a man named Ham, and maybe he's related to Joe Ham, who worked for me for 10 years and whose daughter is our stepdaughter, sorry. Her last name is Horde. But Brad is fourth generation, and he saw the opportunity to grow hemp. Now, what happened? Well, hemp was illegal to grow, or to use, actually, because for some dumb reason, it was put in the federal law in the same drug classification as heroin. Hemp is harmless, and in fact, it's useful. It's a very versatile, vital crop. And it has much, much less THC, which is the active ingredient in marijuana, than marijuana. It's not harmful. But somehow it stayed as what's called a Class 1 drug, along with heroin. Even cocaine and crack were not a Class 1. They were Class 2. So I saw the opportunity here, having talked to our Farm Bureau. We have two folks from the head of the Genesee Farm Bureau. What's your name, sir? Christian Juncker, and his Bruce Nast is also here. And I saw this, and guess who else saw it? Someone who you might describe in a certain sense as a strange bedfellow, Mitch McConnell. I'm the Democratic leader of the Senate. He's the Republican leader of the Senate. But we came together and said, let's change the law and let's make hemp legal. So we did three things in the Farm Bill. A, we moved it down so it's not a scheduled illegal crop to grow. Second, and this is important to people like Brad, we made it available for crop insurance. So you can get crop insurance. Farmers need crop insurance, kids. Some of you from farm families know, because you got to lay out a lot of money in the spring for planting, for equipment, for updating. And then if, God forbid, the crop doesn't come through in the fall, let's say there's a hailstorm or a drought, or let's say something happens in the national markets and the price goes way down, you're stuck. So crop insurance at least gives you insurance that you could come back the next year and farm once again. And so we allowed hemp to be available for crop insurance as well. And so this bill passed the Senate. And now hemp is beginning to be grown in New York State. It so happens the climate in upstate New York, the soil and climate is one of the best for hemp in the country and the world. And hemp is an extremely sought after and valuable drug. Of course, you know the oil is important, CBDs, it's used in medicinal and other things. And it's legal, it's perfectly fine. We are trying to get the FDA to make sure it sets out guidelines, so no one's upset about that. but it can be used in many other things. People don't even know this. It's used in cosmetics. It's used in construction materials. It's a very good thing to build a building with. It's not just rope. You know, everyone thought hemp is just rope. Much more. Ford Motor Company wants to put hemp, because it's cheaper and stronger, in the side doors of their cars, so when there's an impact, you're not hurt too badly. It's used in so many different areas. So there's a great demand for hemp. But there's only one problem. Our bankers, our local bankers, the community bankers who help the farmers, are still a little scared about financing hemp. Why? It's now legal, but they still hear hemp, marijuana, CDC, all that. And so I am writing a letter today to the FDIC, that's the Federal Deposit Insurance Company, and the Federal Reserve and the OCC. Those are our three bank regulators. And I say, hurry up, get moving, and put out guidelines about lending to hemp. It's important for loans. You can get a farm loan, even if it's a guaranteed loan. It's important for credit cards. Oftentimes, they don't want to take the credit card involved in selling the hemp, running the farm, that's a hemp farm or whatever. And it's involved in payment systems. So for all three of those reasons, that's the one barrier left, the banks. And they want to help. They know it's profitable lending for them. But they need this clearance from the regulators. And today I am starting a major push to get the regulators to put out their guidelines about lending to farms, hemp farms, like the Mills Farm here, to lending to any credit card, using it for any credit card transaction, to using it to allow people to deposit money who are involved either in the farming part of the industry or the processing part of the industry. I think I've said everything I'm supposed to say, Chris, right?
So I'm Brad Mills, one of the members of Mills Family Farms. Yeah, that's okay. Senator Schumer hit the nail on the head, right? So our farm started years and years ago as a small dairy farm. As you know, as time has passed, industrialization of the dairy market, it's really tough to keep farms like this moving along. So for my father, for my uncles, my grandfather, things worked out well. Right about the age of retirement, they eased their way out, and here we are. The farm is in great shape, but no longer moving forward. That's where the next generation came in, my sisters, my cousins, and I. We want to keep this farm sustainable for years to come. And luckily, meeting Jason Klimek, our attorney, we began discussing hemp and really the booming industry of CBD hemp. So that's what we got into this year. As you can see, we made some headway. We have a nice crop growing. But
some hemp way.
Yeah, some hemp way. I'm going to take that one.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So things are going well. But we learned quite a bit. So starting up, we definitely had resources that a lot of other people don't have at their disposal. On a small family farm, we had the equipment. We obviously had the land, some of the best land in the state, I would argue the nation, for growing hemp at our disposal. But as we began to move along, we saw obstacles that we really do need financing to approach and to move beyond. So that includes sophisticated equipment for the growing of hemp that a dairy farmer just doesn't have. Along with that, the cost of buying clones, buying seeds, buying sprouting equipment to get those seeds going. None of that your average small dairy farmer, crop farmer would have, and that's very necessary equipment for moving forward in this industry. So because of that, our profits from this year's crop likely won't be enough to both establish that equipment and then move forward with a larger planting for next year. So we really need financing in place for that, and beyond that, moving forward, there's a real shortage of drying and processing facilities in the state as well.
Yes.
And to really advance this farm, ideally in the future, we would like to get into our own drying and processing. But, these are all obstacles that to overcome, we need financing and we need support, like we're getting from Senator Schumer, that we're so grateful for today.
Thank you, Brad. Jason.
I'm Jason Klimek. I am the chair of the Cannabis Practice at Boiling Code in Rochester. Brad, along with many of my other clients, one of their biggest issues in starting into the hemp industry is the financing. And right now it's kind of relegated to very, very small plots or moneyed parties that want to get into it. But some people that are left behind are the local farmers. And so we'd like to try to change that. And we thank Senator Schumer for working on this issue for us. Right here on an acre, it costs about $5,000 just to plant 1 acre of hemp, and that's just the plants alone. That's not all the equipment and the labor and everything. That's a lot for a local farm to do. So we really want the banks to work with our farmers and to revitalize the agriculture industry in New York. And again, we thank Senator Schumer for working with the banks and encouraging them to work with our farmers.
And let me just say this, and I know Jason and Brad will back this up. If they can get if Jason can get the financing with Brad's help, he can grow a lot more than these are the plants right here. And what is that?
This is about
how many plants?
Quarter to half an acre with another over there.
So okay, so they got about an acre, but they could grow many, many more acres. And there's huge demand for CBD oil and for the material, the fiber of hemp to be used in many activities. So he could make very good money. He just has to overcome that financing hump.
Grown sustainably, organically, and using less natural resources such as water than corn.
Yeah. So it's a great thing to do. The one thing left to stand in the way now that we've changed the law is the bankers. We're going to get after them. Okay? Question. Do you want to say yes? Do you want to come up and say the head of our Farm Bureau here in Genesee?
As the industry grows from the demand and eventually normalizes, what can we do as New York State to give ourselves a competitive advantage?
Okay, well,
in New York State, we have higher costs of doing business. We have higher labor costs. Eventually, when the industry normalizes, we're going to be at a disadvantage.
Right. The one big advantage we have is that some of the major companies that want to process hemp, because of my work and the work we did in the bill, want to be here. The biggest processing plant in the whole United States to make oil and fiber is in Tioga County, which is not that far away from here. It's run by a company called Canopy, but guess who helps fund Canopy? Right down the road, Constellation Brands, one of our biggest companies here in the Rochester Finger Lakes area. And so if we can locate the larger processing centers here that don't do the things, Mr. Mills can make it into oil, but some of the other processing, they expect to employ 800. They've invested a ton of money, and usually, the growth occurs near where the processing is.
Now, how about the growers? So if the farm in Kentucky can grow it cheaper than us, they can still ship it here to processing. Can we do something similar to the malt?
Well, yeah.
To the barley industry
Yes.
grown in New York?
Well, we can. There are lots of things that we can do. I helped with the barley industry. In fact, I got crop insurance for the malt barley, which wasn't growing here in New York, and they had to get it from other places, and now it's allowed here. But yeah, we'll do everything we can to give ourselves a competitive advantage. We're off to a good head start. There's a real shortage of hemp. This is not going to be a seller's market for a while. And so that will give us a big advantage because we're ahead of just about everybody else, and the climate is better here. That, Kentucky, Western Kentucky, if they're not near any processing plants, the transportation costs will mount up.
Question for Brad. Just about the economics, then maybe you can step over the mic. So, probably if you weren't growing hemp here, you'd be growing corn, mentioning sometimes
And we are.
soybeans. Just talk about the economics of how you think this will work out if you're taking other crops out of production and growing hemp.
Yeah, so I kind of jumped ship before it was my turn to grow the corn, the wheat, the oats, and whatnot. Now I'm back in it with the hemp. But the way I see this, it's unique, and at least the little background I have growing dairy products, it's very different. It's not like growing a corn stalk; it's like growing a wine grape. So with respect to that, there's a lot of new. It's really a different style of farming for the farmers to learn. As for the economics of a transition from corn-based economy into a hemp economy, I think that Senator Schumer could talk much more for that, but hemp is a much more diverse and can be applied to several different uses within the community, I believe, than corn. Don't quote me on that issue, but you know, and along with
That's
that,
absolutely true.
yeah, and along with that too, what goes into hemp, right? This is an organic, sustainable crop. We're right now doing research with Seneca Farms biochar, testing different biochar and microbe compounds on the growth of our plants. So essentially, the fertilizer that goes in is what the plant is. We take stalks, we put them through a process called pyrolysis, packing the carbon in, and then put them on next year's crop to promote the growth of that. We're not using pesticides, we're not using herbicides. We have drip irrigation, but even that we hardly use. This crop is very hardy, loves growing in this region. So, you know, the ease of growth, the potency of that growth, along with the diverse applications of it, I have no reason to believe that there would be big economical issues with transitioning from corn.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of expense associated with growing hemp.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, I'm just wondering, did the profit margins, do you still expect to be better?
Right now, the profit margins are great. Obviously, as we expect, they're very likely to normalize, and that's where I think a lot of farmers will be interested in starting with the growth, but then moving towards more processing of the product itself to, you know, keep more of the costs in their own pocket. And, you know, beyond that, we're talking about hops, talking about the beer industry in New York, right? As much vertical integration as we can have. You know, that's going to keep a lot of the profits here in New York in the pockets of the small farmers and really limit the industrialization of what I think is a great crop for small farmers.
Cornell Co-op, which studies this stuff for New York farmers and is really smart, says the profitability and future of hemp is one of the highest of any product that can be grown here. Okay? All right. Thank you all very much. Nice to see you all.
Got time for off topics?
Sure.
All right. Congressman Chris Collins, no longer a congressman. Lost representation in NY 27.
Yep.
What do you say to constituents who no longer have representation in the House?
Well, I'd say that we ought to have an election as quickly as possible because this is an area so diverse with its farms, its manufacturing, its tourism, and, you know, 700,000 people, suburban, urban, and rural. It needs representation. So they ought to have an election as quickly as possible. It ought to hopefully be a clean and fair election, and I'll work with whoever wins to help this area.
How surprised were you by the news that came out yesterday?
Not very.
Not at all?
Well,
Did you think it should happen sooner?
I'm not going to comment on that. It's happened. Okay?
Senator, I got a question. This goes to my membership in the National Press Photographer Association and also as a small business owner that's in the news industry. Wanted to see get your thoughts on Senate Bill 1273, which is the Copyright Alternative and Small Claims Enforcement Act, CASE Act, which would make it possible for people without the economic resources, and I've had images stolen on the web,
Yep.
used by major publications even.
I don't know the exact details of the bill, but I'm for the concept. Absolutely.
Can you speak on the impeachment inquiry of President
Yeah, look, I support what Speaker Pelosi did. The Founding Fathers, one of their greatest concerns, if you read Madison or Washington or Jefferson, was that foreign countries would be interfering in our country and in our elections. So to have a thorough and complete investigation of that makes a great deal of sense. I hope it is calm, sticks to the facts, gets away from the heated rhetoric. And then I have told my senators, since if the House votes for impeachment, that we are the jury, that we should wait to see the facts that come before us.
So what about the Republicans? In the
That's all I'm going to say. Okay? Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a nice day. How many of you come from farm families? Okay, well, your family may be interested in hemp, and maybe they can talk to Mr. Mills.
Absolutely.
Okay? Good.
Mr. Mills graduated from this school.
Did he?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that nice?
Third in the class, 05.
Wow.
2005. Oh, yeah.
05. There you go.
Do you mind if we take a quick picture with the group
Let's
before
do
you...
it. Okay, hurry up. These won't last that long.
I don't know which camera to look at. Look in the middle.
Okay? Good. Great. Hello, everybody. Hello, San Diego fan.